Ahoy everybody, I am Jamal and this is my story from the Hungarian Divide. I would like to apologize in advance. Most of the time the footage you will see won't be tightly related to what I'm talking about. Sadly, I didn't have enough power to keep my camera charged up, so that's why. Also my English, I'm not really used to speaking it, so sorry for that, but I thought I would give it a try and at least practice it. So, let's begin. First of all, what is the Hungarian Divide? The Hungarian Divide is a self-supported bikepacking adventure. The first and most important rule of the event is that it has to be completed on your own power using a bike. You decide how far you want to go. It is up to you to decide whether you want to look at this event as a physical challenge, a social ride, or a tourist gig. My goal was, as almost always is, to push myself to the very limit. The full distance divide crosses Hungary from west to east through the northern mountain ranges. It's 1,240 kilometers long and has more than 19,000 meters of elevation gain, and about half of it is on gravel road. So I had plenty of opportunity to be on the edge. The time limit to complete the trip was 11 days, but of course I wanted to finish way earlier than that. I even had a race planned at day 9 here in Budapest that I wanted to win, so I not only had to get back here just for the race, but I had to rest and recover as much as possible before that. Therefore, my plan was to finish between 4 and 5 days. I didn't know how realistic or unrealistic this goal was. I didn't know what kind of roads we will be taking, but I knew that there was a lot of rain in the past days, and they say the track was not in the best condition at the moment. But still, I hoped for the best and hoped that most of it will dry up. I was thinking a lot about what to take with me. I had to be a minimalist, but how minimalist? I had a 16-liter saddlebag, a small frame bag where I usually store my tools anyway, and I bought a small bar bag. And that's it. I have to leave from this for the next maybe 4 to 5 days or even more if things don't go as well as I hope. If you're an experienced bikepacker, you may think this isn't a big deal, but this was the first time for me. Also, tent was out of the question. The weather forecast was promising, so I decided to sleep under the sky or in apartments if I could find any. I only had an ultra sleeping bag, which doesn't offer too much protection but also doesn't take too much energy to carry, so my plan was to ride during the night when the temperature drops and sleep midday. So, what was the rest of my pack? I had the basic necessities like a shower gel, toothbrush, toilet paper, a small towel, a kitchen towel in fact to spare some weight and space, very basic tools for my bike plus zip ties, tape, a light rope for general purposes. I also had one set of clothes besides the one I was wearing, a raincoat, visibility vest, and since I planned to ride during the night, I had 2 power banks, 2 sets of lights, 6 batteries for my high power light, some charging cables, a foldable solar panel, and fuel, lots of fuel. I packed 4 kilograms of high-five energy bars, gels and powder, and I think that's most of it. To be honest with you, I didn't prepare for this event physically, I just hope that the cycling I do in my usual work will be enough. I got to the start the day before, and after the registration and the mandatory bike and equipment check, I went to St. Gotthard, ate a pizza and checked into an apartment. It might just be the last good night's sleep I got until the finish. In the morning, I completely reorganized my equipment. Everybody could have a small bag that the organizer sent to the finish, so I ditched everything that wasn't absolutely necessary for the trip. The small empty space that was left in my saddlebag got filled with food. August 20th is a national holiday, so there were no shops open. There were 99 mountain bikes and gravel bikes at the starting line. We started exactly at 10 am. Soon I positioned myself at the front and I was riding with a group of 4 to 8 people. We almost immediately dived into the forest. There were a lot of mud and puddles, some of them were knee-deep, but we could always find a way to somehow avoid them, even if it took a 20 to 30 meters detour into the woods. You really don't want to ruin your whole drivetrain and the brake pads right at the start. You can dry your feet, but you can't undo the damage the mud causes to your bike. Luckily, besides these few very muddy parts, the trail was mostly rideable and everybody was expecting worse. In the first few hours I was hanging with the guys at the front. They were pushing like hell. It felt like I was on a mountain bike marathon or something. I just really couldn't imagine how is it possible to keep this power up for like a 1200 kilometers journey, but my plan was to hang on them anyway because I could spare a lot of power by riding behind them on the long and speedy gravel sections. After about 2 hours we got a bit stuck in a muddy field, but I managed to get through before them, so I decided to use this time to fill up my bottles. I started to push even harder than before, so I could arrive right behind them after my pit stop. The problem was that I didn't know where was the next water source, so I ended up going on full gas for like half an hour. In the end my plan was successful, but my plan was stupid. After this I could barely hang on them, but just as I thought about letting them go, the man who dictated the pace got a puncture. His friend stuck with him, and also the third guy who was still in the group dialed back a bit. The train fell apart and I was alone from this point. 3.5 hours in, I stopped for a rest. I ate some food and I was just hanging around in the shadows for like half an hour maybe, and waving at the others passing by. While resting, I was preparing for the hell of Zala. The organizers said that the section from 70 to 170 kilometers is one of the hardest in the whole event. It's a series of small and lot of times steep hills that will wear you down quickly because of the elevation change and the bad road conditions. They weren't kidding. It's really hard to make distance when you go slow both uphill and downhill. In the 6th hour I completely ran out of water too. It was well above 30 degrees, so I had to find some water very quickly. I was in a very rural area, but I found some people who were working on a vineyard, so I asked them if they have any water for me. They told me to feel free to use the well. This was the first time I operated something like this, and I was so dehydrated I could barely pull up the bucket. But when I finally got it, well, that was rewarding. Sorry, not sorry. So finally I had some liquid in my system again, but I didn't feel like sitting back on the bike at the moment. The intense 3 hours at the beginning really wore me down, and since I planned to ride through the night, I decided that sleeping right now might be my best option. I rolled out my sleeping bag onto the grass and closed my eyes. Altogether I stopped for 2 hours and it was totally worth it. I felt so much less tired, and the temperature also started to drop, which made riding easier. I hate hot weather. My plan was to ride until 8 to 10 am from now, while covering between 250 and 310 kilometers to keep the 4 to 5 day pace. I was at 110 kilometers at this moment, and about 60 kilometers of this hell of Zala were still in front of me. But I had like 15 hours, so I wasn't that worried. I quickly called the people who overtook me while I was sleeping. I could see that some of them were that tired. I saw 2 people trip over basically nothing. As the darkness came in, I put on my visibility vest and turned on the lights. There was a low power light on my helmet for general use to see my immediate surroundings, see around the corners, see the computer, and to have 2 free hands when I get off the bike. I also used a high power front light with a relatively narrow angle so I could see well forward. With this combination I could almost go as fast downhill as in daylight. Uphill was of course still limited by my power. I even turned off the high power light for these sections to conserve energy. Altogether I was enjoying night riding. I wouldn't recommend it if you want to see the landscape, but I have already seen it and I'm more of a performance oriented person. At 140 kilometers I start for a quick dinner in a village. By dinner I mean some mixed seeds with dried fruits. Might not be the best thing ever, but it gives you energy, and sometimes it's nice to eat something other than energy bars or gels. I checked my phone and found some water source 2 streets back, next to the course. By rolling back I met a small group and told them about the water, and they soon followed me. We were talking a bit. I showed them the Közkutak application that shows you the nearby water sources. It's a very useful app, by the way. They decided to stay there for the night, so I filled up my bottles and went on my way. The next few kilometers are fully on road, so it was a good section for making up some time. I tugged in and pushed a bit harder. But after 5 kilometers I had a strange feeling that something is a bit off. What do you think? I left my phone at the previous stop. Well, so much for that making up time effort. I did a U-turn, let out a big battle cry in the middle of nowhere and rushed back for my phone. Luckily the graph was still at the water source, so my phone wasn't taken. I complained a bit for them on how can I be such an idiot and went on my way again. The rest of the trip to checkpoint 1 wasn't so interesting. Right before the checkpoint I stopped for a rest where 4 university students were camping on the top of the mountain at a forest resting place. We talked a bit, I told them about what I was doing, and I could also listen to some nasty metal tracks they were listening to. I was already missing metal at this point, I have to tell you. When some Dimmu Borgir came in I was totally done. I love Dimmu Borgir. So anyway, from this point I only had to go a few hundred meters to the checkpoint, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I got there. That sight was amazing. I never seen something like that before. There were a table full of Red Bulls, energy bars, and chocolates with a soft mood lighting, in the middle of the forest, in the middle of the night. I'm so sad I couldn't record it. I wanted to put my camera on my power bank, but the area was infested with wasps, so I could barely get to the table. I grabbed my Red Bull and 2 chocolates and left the area as quickly as I could. A few hundred meters away I drank my Red Bull and continued my way. With this checkpoint I finally hit 195 kilometers and Zala was done. Now came Balaton-felvidék. It's a much more popular region amongst tourists, which usually means better infrastructure, so I hoped I could go faster and easier here. I was right. Most of the night was uneventful. At 4 AM at 232 kilometers I stopped in a bus stop to get an hour of sleep. It helped out a lot. Also, when I sat back on the bike, the sun just started to come up, which also had a positive effect on my internal clock. So I felt so much better. Altogether, I was almost at my minimal distance that I set up for stage 1, but I still had 5 hours until the heat set seals, so I had no intention to stop. Sadly, my leg soon changed my mind. My periosteum, which is a word by the way that I just learned, if you don't know, it's a thin layer around the bone that hurts really bad if it gets a hit. So my periosteum on my shin didn't get a hit, but I think it was overloaded. I had this problem all the time when I was an athlete and had to wear spiked shoes that forced my leg into an unnatural position, but I've never experienced this on a bike. It quickly got worse, so I had to call it a day sadly. At around 8 AM at 265 kilometers I found an apartment in Nagyvárzsony and finally I could eat some real food. After that I set up my solar panel, took a shower and went to bed. With that, stage 1 was over.